Okay. Well, I know we have a lot to get through, so I will go ahead and kick us off and get us started today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this month's Leadership Development webinar. Our topic today is Starting Strong, Career Advice for Emerging Professionals, our emerging landscape architects. This is part of, like I said, our leadership development series that we started about 2 years ago at this point. And it's kind of a part of CLARB's core values. We really believe in investing in our current and future leadership, especially volunteer leadership. And one of the best ways we can do that is by providing these webinars. So thank you for joining us here today. And before we get started, I will go ahead and kick us off with as you're coming in and we kick off here, I'm going to launch a poll to just kind of get a sense of where you guys are at in your careers. That'll help us as we go through the webinar today. And so feel that out and we will continue on. So a couple of things before we get started, a couple of tech tips. So you should be muted as you come in, and we will have times throughout the meeting, or throughout the webinar where you can unmute, ask questions. We really want to encourage that. But if you're not speaking, please mute yourself so we can minimize the background noise for everyone throughout the presentation. We will be monitoring chat, so feel free to put your questions and comments in the chat throughout the webinar as well. And we are recording this, so we will send this recording out to all those who registered in case you have to leave early today. And what else was I going to say? We highly encourage you to come on camera. We'd love to see your faces as we're presenting. And this will be a little bit different if you've attended some of our other leadership development webinars. We have a little bit different format today. We'll have panelists who will be answering questions related to kind of early career. And so we encourage you to come off camera, ask your questions, and really engage throughout the presentation today. So with that, I would like to introduce, these are our panelists and our moderator for today. And so Edward Kinney is one of our board of directors and also a landscape architect from South Carolina and a member of their licensure board there in South Carolina. So he will be our moderator today, and I will turn things over to Edward to kick us off and introduce the other panelists. And feel free, Edward, if you'd like to share anything else about yourself as well. I know I did a quick summary of all the wonderful things you do, but feel free.
Yeah.
I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Andrea. Yeah, no, the spotlight's not really on me today, so I'm not going to share anything more than what you already did. I do want to thank everybody for joining us today for this roundtable discussion and open forum. I think it's really important, and thank you all. So I want to introduce, first of all, Candace Dillingham. Candace is a licensed landscape architect from Oklahoma. She sits on our the Oklahoma Licensure Board and is also in her third year with CLARB's Leadership Advisory Council. Candace has a pretty broad background with firms of all sizes, but she now owns her own small LA business focusing on high-end residential. Paul Kissinger is a licensed landscape architect from Michigan and is a recognized fellow with ASLA. He's a graduate of Kansas State University, owns a small LA firm, and he is also a teacher, professor, adjunct faculty. I'm not sure. I'll let you answer that for site planning and design and for pro practice at the University of Michigan. And then finally, our last panelist today is Lindsay Smith. Lindsay is a licensed landscape architect with bachelor's in LA and a master's in urban and regional planning from the University of New Orleans. He's currently the program manager at a medium-sized firm in Louisiana and owns his own landscape architecture firm. So I think before we jump into everybody's individual slides where they're going to tell us a little bit more about themselves, I think we wanted to pull up that poll real quick that hopefully everybody has entered into. Try to see the results of where everybody's from.
I just closed it, Edward, but let me see if I can share the results again. Here you go. I think everyone hopefully saw this. it looks like the majority of folks are emerging, so kind of on their path to becoming a landscape architect, and quite a few licensed landscape architects as well.
And I have to admit, just to clear the poll off my screen, I entered it as well. So I may be one of those licensed fellows. So without further ado, maybe I'd love for our panelists to give us a little bit more insight into who they are. Candace.
Thank you, Edward. Yes, as Edward said, I'm a licensed landscape architect, state of Oklahoma and Texas, and was in Arkansas, but I've let that go. But I need to revise that because I need to practice there on a couple of projects in Northwest Arkansas. But I've had my own firm since 2000. It's small, custom, high-end residential firm, mostly. I went to University of Arkansas. Back then it was a 5-year program. Landscape architecture and architecture were in the same building. Now we've included interior design or interior architecture in that building as well. I sit on the board of the state of Oklahoma, appointed by our governor, for those that are trying to get licensed and or those that regulate licenses for architects, landscape architects, and licensed interior designers. And I drank the Kool-Aid, as they say. I joined CLARB in 2021, and I haven't looked back. So if you don't know much about CLARB, I'm going to talk about that a little bit later.
Awesome. Thank you. Paul.
Afternoon, thank you. So originally from upstate New York, traveled to Ann Arbor to go to school at Michigan to get my bachelor's in natural resources. I was fortunate enough to have a landscape architect as an advisor. I went on to K-State to get my master's degree and was fortunate enough to get recruited by EDSA just about near graduation. I spent 31 years down at EDSA in Fort Lauderdale. Decided I needed a change after 31 years, only one job, and then moved back to Michigan outside of Ann Arbor. I did a stint with a development company looking at a project in the Bahamas. But in 20, I opened up my own firm, Kissinger Design. So I went from a very large firm, a partner, and senior leadership at the firm to me, myself, and I. So it's been definitely a very interesting kind of a change. And I now teach at Michigan. And these are just some of the images of the kinds of projects that I worked on really all over the world. The one on the lower right-hand corner is in Ho Chi Minh, Vietnam. The one above that is in Kentucky. The one next to that's in Malta. So a lot of different things also in Florida. Registered originally in Kansas, then Florida, and now Michigan, and I've had a few other along the way. And I also sit on the Florida board. I've been our board of landscape architects in the state of Florida. I've been in that position for, I think, about 12 years, and a dutiful volunteer in CLARB for a number of years, going back to grading the exam by hand.
Oh, wow. Awesome. Thank you. Lindsay Smith.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, thank you all for joining us, and thank you all for having me. As stated, my name is Lindsay Smith. I'm originally from Jackson, Mississippi. I received my bachelor's from the Mississippi State University. I've moved around a lot in the Southeast. I've worked on firms, traditional firms in both Tennessee, Alabama, Atlanta, and New Orleans. I have been on the public side as well. I've done two stints on the government side. Local government side of doing project management. As I also have I do have a small firm that just does kind of residential type of builds on things like that. And then I also work for CSRS, a Westwood company. I'm one of the program management team for disaster relief. I've worked on quite a few types of projects. To the left, you see the project down to the left. That is a dog park that we did for a multifamily developer in the greater New Orleans area. And then to the right, that is also that same developer. It was their little courtyard area in between the units. So looking forward to speaking with y'all and sharing a little bit of the knowledge I have. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. So today we've sort of we've asked ourselves a lot of questions when we were prepping for this, and we sort of realized that they were falling into these 4 categories. So we're going to craft four sort of, we've got lots of questions around these four categories. And I think as we ask these questions, we're going to take a break at the end of each one and open up the forum should anybody else have questions that they want to ask of our three panelists. That first topic is really going to be talking about choosing your path and company culture. Trying to identify what's right for you and your ethos and your value system and your interests and how to make sure that they align with the company that you're pursuing or is pursuing you. And then, of course, we'll talk also about how do you address those big questions like negotiating salary or negotiating the opportunity to work on projects that you want to work on, and how to advocate for yourself and for your career, what role you can play in it. And then we're going to spend some time talking about something that's super duper important, which is just that work-life balance, making sure that that you're giving it your all, but you're also saving time for yourself. And for those of us whose maybe personal lives are still, we're just personally fascinated by architectural and design, this becomes a much easier thing for us to handle. And then career advancement, right? Like we all want to figure out where we're going in our careers. And then finally, we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about the value of mentorship. I think we've all had mentors in our careers that have had a really strong influence. And how do we honor them? How do we be mentors ourselves? And how do we get back to our professional associations? So again, at the end of each one of these little topics, we're going to pause and sort of let everybody kind of ask any questions. So I kind of want to kick us off with a really big question. I want to ask this to all of you, really, to Candace and Paul and Lindsay. Your careers, I think, sort of parallel my own, and I see some similarities in that a lot of you started out at very large careers, large companies rather, and over the years found yourself at smaller companies or even owning your own company. And what I have always found is that the smaller the company, the more responsibility you have to have, the more responsibility you're given. So kind of looking back on your careers, how did each stage of your career shape you as a landscape architect? And Candace, we can start with you.
Thank you, Edward. So third year of architecture school, landscape architecture school, I had an internship with a big firm in Little Rock, the Melberger firm. It was multidisciplinary, lots of people in the room. There were maybe 150 of us, and hydrologists, structural engineers, surveyors, interiors, architects, landscape architects, everybody. And you were part of a team. And I loved that. I loved that camaraderie. Moved to Tulsa several years after that, and I found several small firms, all very high-end, custom, creatives, different than that. And so like this, I liked the other, but I like this too. So I stayed in Tulsa. I found myself moving up in those firms, and one point I thought I can do this on my own and maybe house some of the monies for myself. So that's kind of how I started. And I found that visiting a job site really turned my brain on and made me passionate more so than ever before, getting to see the project go into the ground and then see how people use those spaces. So then I just meandered to residential, where I know my clients intimately and I can create spaces for them to make memories with their families, and also create an asset for them that they're proud of. So that's kind of how mine transitioned, and I don't think there's any wrong path. That was just mine.
I think that's great. There is no wrong path. Lindsay, when you look back at each stage of your career, how did that shape where you are today?
Well, I'll tell you, when I first got out, I worked for a multidisciplinary firm in the Nashville area, and I was the landscape designer, irrigation designer for Cracker Barrel and Logan's Roadhouse Grills restaurants, all across the nation. So that kind of gave me a better sense of plant materials and different type of materials, as well as different zoning regulations and things like that across the nation. Then moved on to a working for a developer, which is, as you all know, developers want things yesterday. And so, but that helped me really get into lock into the planning. As you see in the middle of the proposed land use plan it's in Richland County, South Carolina, and it was a neighborhood that was kind of going down, and the municipality really wanted to kind of do something, get something to plan going to kind of bring residents back. And so that kind of really got my brain churning on the planning side of it, understanding community involvement, community engagement, community involvement, facilitating charrettes and things like that. So you get to the point where you learn that you don't design for you. You design for the person, and you plan for the residents of the area. And that really kind of triggered me to really get into decide to do masters in urban regional planning. And then moving to the Southeast Louisiana, as you know, we're not unknown to storms down here. So when I got into resiliency and the recovery planning, that really showed me that just said seeing the big picture of all of how we can recover from situations, and not just recover, but build back better. And so I think that's kind of guided my path and how I think about the plan. I mean the profession. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So have you worked for the public sector, or are you employed by the public sector?
Both. Yes, I worked for the public sector for 2 different times. Both with City of New Orleans, and we're doing recovery projects on the management side. And so when it comes to the company that I'm with now, we're a company that's doing the program management for these recovery programs. So yeah.
And so I'm fascinated by this idea that there's so much public involvement when you're dealing with public pieces. Can you speak a little bit more to that? Like, what are their needs and concerns, and how do you address them in your projects and plans and in your workflow?
Well, I think in the biggest concern that a lot of residents have is they think we're coming this big bad profession. We have all these letters behind our name, and we should know what's better for their neighborhood, right? And I think that's one thing you got to combat. That's when you have to really listen to them and understand what do they want, what are their hopes for the area that they live in, and what are their and you get to know them because, okay, what do you like to do? What do you enjoy doing with your time? In your downtime. And so that's really it kind of gives you the chance to listen to them and not try to tell them what to do, but kind of let them tell you what you want them to do, what they want you to do for them, right? So,
right. Listening is quite the skill to have.
Yes.
Paul, when you kind of look back at your long and storied career, you said 30 plus years down in Florida. Hats off to you. That's not easy.
Agree.
I'm a native, by the way, so I'm allowed to say that. When you look back at that career that you've had, what are some of the really big projects that have kind of shaped you, or the really big incidences that have shaped your career?
Well, it was interesting as a graduate student going down to work at EDSA. One of the things that I was fortunate enough to do was kind of move into project management early. And part of that was, believe it or not, I was playing basketball, met a friend of mine that ran a transit authority, and it ended up he calling me one day and say, "Hey, I need to do a train station, and can you help me?" And I remember looking over the partition into Joel Ollie and saying, "Hey, do we do train stations?" He's like, "Sure we do." And can I go to a meeting? Sure, you can go to a meeting. And when I went down there, my friend started talking about, if we do this and this part, we can do that. If we do this and this part, we can do that. And I go, "Do you have a master plan?" And he's like, "What's that?" And I was able to kind of describe to him what a master plan was. And that initial start at like 2 years in at EDSA ended up turning into significant client for the firm. I got to do all the project management work and design work because it was a lot of different stations and design guidelines. And then that allowed me to meet other people in the profession and network, which ultimately, turned into other transit work in South Florida, a fair amount of urban design work. This is a project that I did in Kentucky with my team, and was really the first major project, riverfront project, that I brought in all by myself and ran essentially as a principal. And you know, the buck stops at your desk, and I learned quite a bit during this process, and decided that, you know, working on these big projects was something that I was really interested in from the beginning, because I interned with a small firm. And I just felt, after going to school at Michigan in the natural resources program, that I wanted to have, you know, the most positive impact that I could on the environment, and, you know, hopefully change people's lives for the better. And so, you know, I kind of tried to do that throughout my whole career as a landscape architect. And, you know, now as a teacher, I try to do that with my students as well, you know, one student at a time, one project at a time.
Yeah, I love how you started off with the question, do we do this kind of project? And can I participate in this project? Because that's what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about for young professionals how to advance their careers. And I always think that the best thing anyone can do is just ask if they can do it. You know, sometimes as the management team, we have to say no, but more often than not, we're going to say yes, please. You know, show us what you're interested in, and we're going to get you involved where we can.
Absolutely. I mean, that's that, and gaining that responsibility early in your career, and, you know, basically doing what you say you're going to do really counts. It really counts.
Yeah. Candace, I know we got the opportunity to look at Lindsay and Paul's some work examples, and I want to go back and take a look at yours. Very different in some ways. You know, much more humane, much more smaller scale, but very vitally important. Can you talk about some of the biggest learning experiences you've had on your sites and with your projects?
Yes, Edward. So like Paul said, Lindsay said, and even you have said, we are listeners, I think, number one. Number two, problem solvers. You don't know the problem till you listen. And then you find out, as a landscape architect, the constraints of the site, the opportunities of the site, how this family functions, who's in this family, do they entertain? So before that, when I was in bigger firms, I learned all that, obviously, how this big multi-complex health system, Baptist health system in Little Rock worked. You know, what was the strategic plan for this campus? Same thing here, just on a smaller scale. Then you've got to get to know your clients really well. As far as mistakes, any that have been made is if I'm just not on site as much as I want to be. I think there's critical little moments that a contractor either cannot interpret the plan, or interprets the plan with their own set of filters, or goes with something they're comfortable with, even if you've dotted every I and crossed every T. So I think every time any emerging professional can ask, like Lindsay, like Paul did, can I go on this job site? Can I see the work? You're going to learn what you've just drawn and how that works in real time and in real space. So I think my biggest mistakes, if I can think of any, are pinpointed at the point of missing several crucial moments during construction, and not getting the connection between how that works with contractor, how that works with the timeline of the client, how that works with the site constraints. And you can see in all my photos here, most of these spaces are livable spaces. Humans live here with their dogs, their cats, their grandbabies, and then their church groups. And all of them need to either be intimate for the 4 of them, or 24 of them if they so desire. So just understanding spatial relations and listening to your client, I think, is key. That's where I've learned the most, is on that listening field, in that listening field.
That's so interesting you would bring that up, Candace, because you're right. The contractor is the ultimate arbiter of the design, because no matter what your intentions or your client's intentions or what your drawings show, they are the people who are actually building it at the end of the day. And when you as a designer get to have the opportunity to be there during the construction process, it becomes a much more intimate experience, and you get to really put your fingerprints on it at that level as well.
Right, and it's easy enough to say in that top right drawing, top right photo there with the blue pool, last minute, we wanted that to be 7.5 feet wide, that stone, instead of 6. And there was a reason for that. And if I weren't on site and okayed that, maybe the contractor would have stayed at 6. The client asked for 7.5, and she had a real reason. And I'm glad we could make that happen. Sometimes on my commercial projects, didn't get to ever see the site, didn't really get to meet the client. So I appreciate when we all as a team can come together and make a choice and make a decision.
Yeah, it's a magical moment when you start seeing your drawings become reality. So I guess we'll move into that first big topic, which is choosing your path and your company culture. And Lindsay, I'd like to start with you if we can. You know, how does an early career professional evaluate a workplace beyond just the job description? They've read the job description, they've been able to land the interview. What are the key things they look for when deciding if a company is right for them?
Well, one of the things I would recommend looking for is what type of projects do they work on? Is it something that is it just one type of project the whole firm works on, or is it a vast majority, different types of projects and different levels? Do you work? Is it only public work? Is it only private work? Is it resiliency work? Is it just doing land subdivisions layout? So just kind of understanding what kind of types of projects they work on, and seeing which that. And another thing is like kind of as you're walking, talking to some of the people, because a lot of times with these interviews, you're interviewing and you walk around and talk to people. See how long a lot of people have been there, because that can tell you a lot about a company. If people stay, if people have been there 10, 12 years, you obviously know, and they've moved up, you can tell then, okay, this is a company that, one, people like being here, and two, people are respected to be in being here because they're still here after 10, 12, 31 years, like Paul. So it's one of that's a couple of things I would really look at doing that. And then just what's the vibe of the is it a studio style? Is it cubicle? Is it open? Is it open communication? Is there an open door policy? Is it something that you can really get to know people more? And lastly, is like what type of mentorship is there? And we'll touch on that a little later. But how big do they look at mentorship and career advancement and career development on particularly younger emerging professionals?
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. Yeah, company culture is really important. And Candace, when we were talking earlier, you had some pretty important thoughts about a company culture. I'd love for you to share them. Like what should one look for before they accept a role?
Well, speaking for myself, after 5 years of school, I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know if I wanted to be in a big firm, small firm. I didn't know. But because I'd had that internship, I thought, I know these people, they're familiar with me, they like me, they want me back. I'm going there. Then I'll decide after that. So that's what I did. But on the broader spectrum, I think you need to think about structure. Who are the principals? Who are the players there? And how do their personalities rate with yours? How do you connect with them? Or are they connectable? Will they speak to you on one-on-one? Will they take you on a job site? Or is it just too busy for you? So structure is important, resources, what the big firms or small firms bring to the plate. So sometimes you don't have as many perks in a small firm, and you might really need perks. You're starting your family, you need some 401k investment, you need some health insurance. Smaller firms may not be able to do that for you. So you got to think about those resources, and then who's going to help you take that LARE, and are they going to pay for it? Smaller firm may not be able to, larger firm will. Also, the makeup of the firm. Is it people like you or people you can learn from that you adore already? You're like, look at that guy, look at that gal. She speaks to me. I can see myself in her, someone you can connect with. And then maybe pace. Small firms like mine, we go 0 to 100 miles an hour, and every person who works for me has to get it quickly. And I'll help them. I don't expect them to know that, but I want them to want that. And in a bigger firm, you might be a more cerebral like person, like my husband. He's a landscape architect as well, and he's like, no, just want to draw this master plan and pass it off to the next guy to get to the details. So you got to know yourself and understand how you fit in, and if that firm's going to enjoy your capabilities.
Paul, before we open it up to some questions, I want to get your thoughts real quick also, because I know that you started out at a big firm, DSA, for many, many years. And then you got much smaller and now you own your own company. So kind of hearing from Lindsay and hearing from Candace, why did you choose a big firm? What kind of culture do they have? What did you take from that culture and bring into your own small firm? What did you adopt or what did you reject?
That's a good question. As I mentioned earlier, I wanted to go to a big firm because I was really intrigued by the large scope of services. I thought that was really, really quite interesting. And when I worked for a small firm, the mentor that I had said, when you go to a big firm, they're going to chew you up and spit you out. And be careful of that and be careful about getting, at the time was called pigeonholed. But he said, when you stop learning, then it's time to move on. Well, I never stopped learning. And I was able to get into some leadership positions early, bring work in, and really the attitude I brought back, I think, or to my own firm is we can pretty much do anything we set our mind to as a profession. And if you are interested in, like, I opened up the Vietnam market for the firm. I'd never been to Vietnam. A lot of people were doing stuff in China, and I'm like, well, if everybody's doing stuff in China, what happens when that market goes down? So let me go look in Vietnam because I had an interest in that. And by a variety of just kind of connections, I ended up doing a whole bunch of myself and my team did a whole bunch of work there. And Candace, as you said, there's nothing better than being on a construction site and seeing it come off the page. And so I think that the attitude of you can pretty much do what you set your mind to is really the attitude that I took from a large firm. I can, the things that are interesting to me, I think I can still go ahead and do those things even though I'm at a small firm.
Oh, yeah, I love that attitude that, if you think you're done learning, move on, but you're never done learning.
Right.
You really aren't. So Andrea, I think we're at the bottom of the hour. We still have three big topics to cover, so we got to speed it up a little bit. But I do want to open up the floor to any questions we have for Candace, Lindsay, or Paul.
Nothing?
None?
Feel free to unmute and ask a question or put it in the chat. If we don't have anything now, we can always pause again. Yep, looks like we have a question.
Oh, interesting one. Michael asked if a new employee misreads company culture or company culture changed after the initial period after the interview, how long would you stay?
Oh, that is a good question.
That's a good question. I'll jump in.
Yeah.
That has happened to a couple of my friends. And you don't stay another minute longer. I mean, life's too short, in my opinion, and you're valuable. And that firm may have a great direction and it just doesn't jive with you. Nothing wrong with them, nothing wrong with you. I think you start looking whenever you can. I don't think back in the day, jumping around wasn't a great idea. This day and age, we all know how important mental health is and family and how it relates to work-life balance. And I think it's okay to start looking. Don't burn any bridges. You're going to see these people a million times again, and you may lean on them again and may even go back. But definitely take care of yourself. That's what I'd say.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think, Candace, you hit the nail on the head too, it is a small profession. Mm-hmm. Don't burn a bridge, but it's okay to move on.
Yeah, I mean,
so now we got some questions that are really rolling.
There we go.
I'll third that. Now let's go to the next question.
Let's try to hit some of these real quick before we move on. We can always go back and ask these after. What was your networking strategy in your early career to learn that first job? Where'd you job search? Who'd you contact? Great question.
I'll jump into that one because I did that early. you need to have a 30-second elevator speech whenever you meet somebody new, and they just, say, "Hey, what do you do?" and you have that kind of all prepared. And I think, the one thing that I've learned, you never know where that job's going to come from. And simply being a good person and letting other people know what you do, that's how you start to network. And what I would also tell my young landscape architects in my studio is, um, you know, don't rely on developing a relationship with your counterpart at another firm, like an architecture firm or an engineering firm. Pick the phone up, talk to them, because ultimately they're going to move up in the firm and you're going to move up in the firm. And you can work with two kinds of people you like or people you don't like. And most of the time you're going to want to work with people you like. It's pretty
Yeah.
simple.
I am noticing lots of fantastic questions rolling in, and I want to remind everybody that at the end of the hour, we are going to share everybody's email addresses. Candace, Lindsay, Paul, myself, we all have a vast amount of experience working both public and private. And so if we don't get to your question today, everybody here has agreed, please feel free to reach out to us. We do this because we believe in the profession. We believe in helping people enter this profession. So maybe I'll ask, that being said, I think I want to jump into that next set of questions on negotiation and advocacy. This is kind of an open forum one real quick, but how do you ask for what matters most, right? So you've got the job, they're interested in you. You don't want them to lose interest in you as a young professional, but you still have to hit some of those key life factors like salary and benefits, time off, even. These are all important. So how do you value yourself? How do you breach that topic? And for those of you who are employers, I'd love to hear your opinions.
So in my situation, well, in my experience, I've noticed that kind of when you get to that point, first and foremost, you have to let your work and your personality speak for itself. At first you got to have that, because if you go in asking for, hey, give me more of this, give me more of this, but you're not credible. They can't rely on you to get stuff done in a timely manner, in the time it needs to be done, and correctly and efficiently. I think first and foremost, you got to handle that. In essence, you just got to handle your business first and foremost with that. Then don't be afraid to say, hey, I've worked on this, and show your curiosity in some things. I've said plenty of times, hey, I've worked on this. What are we doing on this project? Is there a space for me in this area, something like that I can help out on? Is there anything that I can help out on? Is there anything that you need? Any information that anybody need me to reach out to? I think that's one of the ways. And what that does, that builds that credibility that they can rely on you. And they're like, all right, we know that this person is gonna take care of what he needs to take care of. He's gonna be efficient in what he does. And that always is gonna get employers' attention, in my opinion. And then you hit it on the head. Be a good person. Just be a good person. Be on time. Don't come to work late all the time. Just be as good a good professional, I guess is the best way I can say it.
I think there's, and Candace and I had a conversation about this earlier. When you're first going out for a job, I'll tell you, the large firm's kind of mentality is there has to be consistency between vacation, benefits, 401k. So those are generally not negotiable, because they're looking at, over 100 people or more. And so those are fairly specific. There's a moving allowance that may be something you can negotiate. Your start date, I think, is a really big deal. I've let people start later than right after school, because I know when I first started, I didn't get a chance to do that. And I remember that to this day, 35 years later. And but the other thing that I think is always kind of important is the attitude that you're coming to work with. So if you are focused on negotiating a salary, that's sending a message either to the HR director or to the principal that that's the most important thing on your mind. Now, candidly, if you have another offer that's much more than what the current firm is offering to you, you can certainly ask and show them the offer. But, we basically said, good luck. We'd love to have you, but this is what our offer is. And don't burn the bridge. And what I say is, if you're looking for a few $1,000s more, if you start looking at taxes and 2-week paychecks, is an extra $100 a paycheck going to really make the difference? Whereas if you come in with a great attitude about wanting to learn, showing up to work, as Lindsay said, doing what you say you're going to do, your salary is going to pick up real quickly.
Yeah.
I agree, Paul. Yeah, we talked about this in a previous session, the four of us on the panel. And attitude, like he says, is key. If you are eager to learn, eager to please, eager to understand, eager to own your mistakes, in any firm, you're going to move up quickly. So you might start at this number, this firm, but it's closer to the house. It's closer to your friend group. It's closer to your mom and dad that you might need to take care of, or your children's school once you have children. So it all works out in the end. Money isn't number one. It sometimes is for those of us coming right out of school. We have student loans, et cetera, et cetera. You're helping family members, maybe even in a different country, and you want to pile up as much money as you can to take it home. But those other benefits matter just as much: location and closeness to family and the respect you feel in that firm.
Yeah, and as you do a great job, it's a lot easier to ask for money as you stay on at a firm too.
I agree.
It's a whole different story than when you first start.
Yeah. And as I tell new employees myself, don't be afraid to just tell me what you want and what you need. For us, salary is not an emotional figure. It's just a mathematical figure. I'd like to get that out of the way as quickly as possible to make sure we're all on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go ahead and jump, I think, into the next segment, that's work-life balance, because we're surprisingly running out of time. So I'll go back to one of the questions. I know we want to spend a little bit of time talking about licensure during this segment. So I'll go back to one of these questions that came through earlier, and this is from Hillary. What types of projects or jobs in your professional experience helped you most in feeling prepared for the LARE? And how far into your career did you become licensed, and what was the motivation for it? Maybe Candace, if you want to jump into that one.
So, like I've said, I started in a big firm in Little Rock, and my mentor, Frank Riggins, I love him. I talked to him today. I had a question about expansion joints, and I still talk to him about stupid little things like that. Like, can you draw this driveway expansion joint grid? You do it so much better than me. But at the time, he believed in me. He's like, you can sit for the test 1 year out of school. I'm going to sign some paperwork, and the state of Arkansas will allow you to sit 1 year. I think you're ready. Other jurisdictions don't allow that, but I did, because I thought it's fresh in my mind. I've got good breadth of knowledge. I probably won't pass all 7 sections, because at the time it was 7, but I'm going to do my darndest to pass and impress him and them. Well, I passed, I think, 5 of 7, and then I moved to Oklahoma, and they're like, no, you only sat 1 year out of school. Oklahoma says 3, so luckily we're working towards uniform standard for all 55 jurisdictions, but that kind of stuff happens. And so what I'd say is get a broad base of knowledge. Ask your upperclassmen. So if you're in 3rd year, let's say right now, school, and you've got some graduating friends, keep in contact with them as they're starting their career, and ask all those questions all along the way. I mean, you'll always have a mentor. Hopefully you do, and I hope you always do mentor, because that will help you understand how and when you're ready to take that test and or parts of the test. And studying, get a study group. I think that's key. And being that go-getter for yourself, saying, can I go to the job site? So I saw Sienna asked a question about that, or might have been Sarah. I lost it, but go to the job site as much as you can, because drawing a construction detail versus seeing a construction detail be put in the ground, that really helped me pass the construction part of the test. And also grading and drainage, drawing topo maps versus spot elevations, and then going to see topo and spot elevations, and then using the transit system really helped me understand.
Yeah, that was, yeah, Sarah asked, how do you get to see your projects on site versus being stuck working on designs, not getting out into the field? And Candace, I think that's just right. You've got to convince folks that you will do a better job drafting details when you actually see them in the site. I mean, you've got to understand the issues that the contractors are dealing with and the real tools and materials that they're using in order to know how to draft something correctly and appropriately. So it's a two-way street. Lindsay, if I can ask you real quick, since Candace kind of, tapped on licensure a little bit. What advice would you give to someone who hasn't yet pursued licensure? Let's talk about the benefits of licensure when you're trying to balance all these other things, your life, your work, your family, and you want me to get licensed as well. Why? Tell a young professional why.
Well, the first question I would ask is, why not? And I'm not saying that not to be flippant, but my understanding, what you spent this time in school, you paid this money or received this money for this degree, and why would you not want to maximize that? I guess is the first thing I'd ask. Why would you? Now there may be a good reason. And so that's why I say I don't mean it flipping. Why not? Why would you want to maximize? Why would you not want to maximize that? And then nextly, I would say, okay, one of the things that got me wanting to be licensed was I have, teachers in my family, grew up with all educators, and they had to pass something. So basically, coming to school, you want to get to the profession, you want to be the licensed professional, in my opinion, as at the top is the highest level you can go. You see what I'm saying? I'm trying to say that it was one of those things. It's an inner drive in me that I wanted to be a professional. I didn't just want to be just this, just that. I wanted to be a professional, and I had that drive in me. Now, I'm not saying that's not for everybody, but I would say what's holding you back? What are you scared of? First of all, what are you scared of? Are you scared you're not going to pass it? Well, you're talking to somebody here who took 16 years to pass the exam. Just being honest. Took me 16 years to pass the exam. So there's nothing to be scared of. Is it too expensive? Yeah, but there's things that there's sometimes companies pay for it, and sometimes if you get the opportunity, you can put a few dollars occasionally. But that my thing is, what are you scared of? And it's, how are you gonna how would you gonna get past that fear? And then lastly is understanding that with this license, a lot of different opportunities can be presented or are open to you that you may not have had before. You may not, like for instance, like for me, instance, I haven't done a true.
Uh-oh. I think we might have lost
in years, but because I'm doing more management. Oh, so I'm sorry. Am I back now? Am I back now?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So I haven't done a true landscape plan in years, right? But because I'm a licensed professional, it created an opportunity for me to do on the management side, because they can say that, okay, he did something, he acquired something that not everybody acquires. So it creates it can create opportunities for you, is what I would say why you do it.
Paul, I'd like to hear from you real quick before we jump into our last segment. We've got 10 minutes left here. When you were hiring for EDSA,
Yeah.
and you saw someone come through with a license, what did that tell you about that individual?
Well, what it told me was that the person was committed to the profession. I looked at, or I shouldn't say that people that don't have a license aren't committed, but it was evidence of another kind of level of commitment and passion to come in with a license. I mean, I always encourage the folks that were on my team, take the test right out of school. A lot of places will let you do that. You might not become licensed until you get the years of experience, but take the test. You're used to studying because life gets busy. And so having accomplished that means that they got that out of the way, and there's no cap to what they can do in their career. So I highly encourage getting a license. I know it's expensive. I know not all the firms pay for it, but chip away at it. Chip away at it, because it's going to get harder and harder and harder to find time to do that the older you get.
Yeah. So I want to I kind of skip ahead to our last segment here, and I want to open it up to you, Candace, because I heard you talk a little bit about your mentor. And I think every time you and I have a conversation, at some point you bring him up. It sounds like a fantastic person who had a huge influence on your life. So how are you being a mentor now that you're a little more advanced in your career?
So Edward, yeah, he is important to me. He's like a father figure, and I think if he were a woman, he'd be a mother figure. It didn't matter male or female. What mattered was that he poured himself into me learning this field, this career, and I do the same in the ways that I can, which is I sit on my local chapter of ASLA. We visit the universities in Oklahoma. We speak to them. I sit in personally on pro practice classes for OSU, and I have at OU. I've taken some OU students, some graduate students around to some of my projects and just showed them some project under construction and let them ask me any questions for a whole day with Dr. Sarah Lytle. She's a professor at OU. I also sit on the professional advisory board at the School of Architecture in Arkansas, and I have for 13 years. And we meet with the dean, and we understand curriculum choices. We understand the students' projects and their workloads and their studio spaces and the crowding, if so, and the lack of attendance other years and enrollment, and just stay connected to your university or whatever jurisdiction in maybe your university's there, and put yourself in those places, especially your associations like ASLA and eventually CLARB, and then your academic professional situations.
Lindsay, did you have a mentor?
I did. I had quite a few mentors. One of them was a older gentleman when I moved to the planning side, and I had two. My two main mentors was John Davis in Georgia. Was when I was living in Atlanta. He really got me understanding planning and how to listen to, as I stated in when we were doing master plans, listening to communities and what they want. And then when I moved down to Louisiana, I had another mentor, Ray Gumpert, who he was a licensed landscape architect, and all he did was landscape plans. So he knew plants left, right, up, down, all over the place. And I got so much insight from him. And what I think made them such great mentors is they wanted better for me than for them. Their mindset is, I want to hire you, and I want you to be better than me. And I think that's kind of the mindset you got to have when you're doing mentoring. It's like you want that person you're mentoring to exceed what you've done, right? Exceed what you've achieved, because they understand that you put a lot of faith in them, and you're really putting stuff into them and filling into them information they need. So I definitely would say that's something you got to do as a mentor.
Yeah. And Paul, I wanted to ask you about what advice you give from new landscape architects, but I think this is also a great moment for us to address one of these questions I see in the chat. And this is from Christopher. He asks, what advice would you give to a young firm, not necessarily young LAs or new LAs, but a young firm is trying to get work in the field where, they've got veteran LAs who are very well known, get a lot of public work through word of mouth, longstanding reputation. Like, how do you and your firm break into that market?
It's a lot of time doing, I'll say kind of like the quote, the market research. And what I mean by that is what kind of work do you want to do? You have, as a young firm, you got to figure out what kind of work do you want to do. You take stock in what relationships do I already have. Again, my point of when you're in a big firm or another firm, stay in touch with the people at the other firms, the engineers, the architects. Get out in the public, join the Chamber of Commerce, volunteer. Part of that is going to be getting your name known. Think about the web page, think about press releases. Make a list of clients that you want to pursue each year and set up a strategy. One of the things that we talked about doing, again, at a larger firm, so it's a different scale, but even as a new firm, you can look at it as another scale. We knew that we probably weren't going to work in New York City and Chicago and those tier 1 cities. So we started looking at, well, where does Southwest go? And are there places that we're already doing work? And do we have relationships by a firm, an architecture, an engineering firm, and we can get there quickly? And we'll spend some time there setting up meetings. So it's a lot of research and finding out who that you think you need to meet. And with LinkedIn, certainly, it's a lot easier. With some of the AI searches that you can do, it's a lot easier to find those kinds of names. But it's getting yourself out there and talking to people. That's really the best thing. And then when you get started, great work is the great marketing opportunity. Your work will speak for yourself. People learn that, Candace is doing a great job. Lindsay's doing a great job with these kinds of projects. You need to call them. And then as a professional, you basically, if you literally do what you say you're going to do, because there's so many people that don't do that, you will become reliable and people will reach out to you.
So this is hard to believe, but we only have 2 minutes left. And I want to be respectful of everybody's time. So very quickly, if I can just maybe get some summation sentences or big takeaways before Andrea pops up all of our contact information. Lindsay, what you got for us?
I would say, man, first of all, you all young emerging professionals are doing the first step of actually being involved in these type of events, these type of webinars, learning, listening, and reaching and being able to reach out to people. So keep doing what you're doing. Learn as much as you can. I was told sometimes you just got to overlearn, because it's rather overlearn than underlearn. So learn as much as you can. Just really get engulfed into each project you're doing, even if it's just a quick landscape plan for something. Get engulfed in it. Learn every aspect of it. That's the advice I'd give.
Paul, any last words of advice before we got to get going?
Sure. Don't be afraid of making mistakes, because you learn from your mistakes. Own them. It's okay. Ask questions. Don't worry about whose fault the mistake is. Just work on solutions. And that's how you're going to learn so much. And don't be afraid to ask questions.
Yeah. Candace, you want to bring us out?
Sure. I just say, I think always giving back helps. It makes you feel good. Someone asking you questions also helps us understand our field better. And don't be afraid to ask. Call us after this. Email us all. We're here for you. We wouldn't be where we are. It's a team. And we appreciate you attending.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'd say the exact same thing. Landscape architects, we're a collective. We want to see each other succeed. We want the profession to succeed. We're all in this together. So please, we've got our names up on the screen. We've got our contact information up on the screen. Feel free to reach out to every single one of us if you have any questions that weren't addressed today, or if you just want to know general questions about the profession and where it's going. Reach out to us. Andrea?
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you, Lindsay and Paul, Edward, Candace. Really appreciate all your advice today. So as Edward said, their contact information is on the screen. We'll also share it afterward when we share the recording. Just a few things to wrap us up, because I know we're right at the hour. We greatly appreciate any of your feedback. It helps us as we're planning for future webinars to include in this series. So please provide us your feedback, and we'll also have that in the wrap-up email that goes out as well. And then last but not least, for next just a few short weeks, we're a little later this month with our webinar. We will have on October 15th our next leadership development webinar, Leading People and Embracing Change. So a lot around change management, which is a huge thing. I think everybody has to deal with change in their life. So that'll be our next topic. But again, yes, thank you to our panelists and Edward, our moderator today. I think this was really helpful. So thank you for your time, and thank you everyone for joining us today. We really appreciate it. Have a good one.
All right. Thank y'all.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I know. Yep. Thank you.